Did you put a filter on?
No, I don't know, I'm kidding.
Oh.
I think we're high def now, though, so we look better.
High def, oh God, that's scary.
I think.
I think we're live now.
Oh, we are, okay.
Oh.
Do you want me to kick it off?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Littleton, and welcome to the Littleton Station Area Committee meeting for Monday, July 19th, 2021. We're going to begin tonight's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Perfect. So tonight's agenda is pretty brief. First on the agenda is an organization, organizing the committee. Then we're going to do an overview of the work to date, and then the 40R zoning bylaw discussion, and then we're going to discuss next steps, and then we are going to adjourn tonight's meeting. So as the public is aware, the Littleton Station Area Committee had been meeting for quite some time now and was organized. It comprised of 2 members from the planning board, 2 members from the select board. I have since stepped in on behalf of the select board in the role of Chuck DeCoste, formerly had this seat on the committee, so I am here now. So we do need to reorganize and appoint, I guess, a chair of the committee and all
So
of
someone
that.
has to make a motion for a chair?
Yeah,
I'll make a motion that Cindy Napoli be chair of it. Delisa was the chair before.
I
Right.
second that.
perfect.
She doesn't wanna, no.
No. So motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Excellent. And so then we really should have, do we want to do a vice chair and clerk and all of that?
We definitely need a vice chair. Do we need a clerk?
Well, who's going to take minutes? Or maybe the vice chair could take minutes, or anyone could take minutes?
Oh, I see, yeah, so we should do both.
Yeah.
Why do we need minutes?
Do we need minutes?
What, don't,
Can't we have,
We need
yeah, but
minutes.
can't we have them transcribed like
can't
we?
can we have it off the video?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to be written, though. We have to approve them.
Oh, that's okay, but we can have somebody do it, right?
Okay.
We'll do it that way, so we don't need it.
Okay. All right. I didn't know that was an
Delisa, do
option.
you wanna be vice?
Sure, I'll be
Instead?
vice chair.
I'll make a motion to Delisa be vice
I
chair.
second.
Excellent.
All those in
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
We don't have to do our hands and say our names anymore?
No, no more Zoom.
Sometimes we do.
So just so the public's aware, we decided to meet in room 103 in person. We thought it would be more productive as opposed to just holding our meetings through Zoom. So anyone that is interested in the Littleton Station area project, certainly feel free to welcome. We welcome you to join us here in 103 as our meetings go forward in the future. So we're all organized. So now it's just really an overview of the work to date. And one of the things that I did want to maybe address right now, and I'm going to call upon Maren Toohill, our town planner, if you could just explain the new the legislation that's being proposed that impacts this area. I think it would be helpful. I think that's something that a majority of the public is not aware of, so it might be a good starting point for discussion for purposes of this evening.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Cindy. Maren Toohill, town planner. I think I know everybody here. In January of this year, legislature passed and governor signed housing choice legislation that was intended to promote housing, market rate housing, affordable housing, just to make it easier for housing to be developed across the state. One of the items included in that legislation was the requirement for all 156, I think it is, MBTA communities to include in their zoning bylaws an area where apartments are allowed by right. So that plays into, and Littleton was already ahead of the game as far as getting an area like that established with the work that we had done on the Littleton station.
So it's called a 40A now, correct?
What's called 48?
Isn't that what the legislation was, 40A?
Well, it,
It was under the zoning act, it's a new section 3A.
yeah,
Yeah.
So we don't know what to call it yet?
I couldn't tell you exactly where it fits in, but correct.
But so
It's-
according to this, this legislation has been signed by Governor Baker.
Correct.
It is now an act, I mean, it's in place. And does it designate or tell communities where this housing has to be built? I.e. right next to the train stations?
It gives communities some options where they want to put it, but wherever the town designates as being that area, that would have to comply with the law. So that was a roundabout way of saying we have some flexibility on where it could be.
Okay.
Oh, we do.
But definitely at the commuter rail station would qualify.
And do you think the intent behind this legislation was to designate areas around train stations specifically?
It's areas around train stations, it's areas near other business activity areas, downtown areas, such as Littleton Common.
Okay, so hubs kind of where,
Yep. Areas near bus stops, areas near commuter rail stations. You know, some communities have more options. We have a few that would meet with the requirements of the legislation.
but we must do this.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm
What's
curious
the
about,
requirement?
I'm curious about that requirement. Is there a time frame, or how is it enforced?
So the state is working on issuing guidance. They have issued some preliminary guidance. Right now, communities are encouraged to comply as soon as practicable, understanding that it does take a certain amount of time to put zoning in place. So there's no penalty at the current time for not having it in place, but as the time goes forward, there are, I can imagine that the state would, for example, add points to grant applications that, for communities that do qualify as housing choice communities. So I would imagine that for Littleton to maintain our status as a housing choice community, we'll have to put this into place.
And if we don't comply, Marta, it was my understanding that we wouldn't be eligible for funds through Housing Choice or Mass Works grants going forward.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And just what my notes had said about the language in the statute is it's a minimum gross density of 15 units per acre. I had written down that it said no more than a half mile from a commuter rail station, a subway station, a ferry terminal, or a bus station.
That's part of the,
Language, right?
Right.
And there can't be any age restrictions, and the housing must be suitable for families with children.
correct. There should be no age restrictions written into the bylaw.
Okay.
But we could still have an area that was for seniors.
If you get a specific application, then that includes an age restriction, then it's just not written into the bylaw.
Into the bylaw, okay.
Okay. And so the big difference between what they're proposing through the zoning act and what is being proposed through the 40R zoning bylaw change is the number of units per acre. Is that correct?
Well,
So if it
in
would
the-
be minimum gross 15 units per acre, but through the 40R zoning change, it could be 20 units per acre.
Yeah, in the 40R, there was a range
Yeah.
for, from 20 units per acre and 12 units per acre if you're doing starter homes, and 8 units per acre for, so now I'm forgetting. But it was 8, 12, and 20 were the three different categories under 40R. So as long as there is, so we can comply with the new state legislation, as long as there's an area that has at least 15 per acre
Okay,
within the district.
okay. And the rezoning that we're proposing as well, would, provide us with 40S payments? Through the zoning bylaw change, right?
Under certain circumstances, yes.
Okay.
If the town ends up spending more on school, only because of students that are drawn to that.
From that, whatever
Development.
community development might be built. If we
Right.
do see, if we can correlate a specific impact on school enrollment, then we would be eligible for those payments.
Right, compared to previous years' enrollment. So if
Right.
you're enrolled, some years our enrollment goes up, some years our enrollment goes down.
Right.
Over the years, it's really a roller coaster. When my kids were in school here, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it was fairly high enrollment. It's been down and now it's up again.
Right.
But but originally, we were looking at this 40R district to target more younger single person households, younger and older, empty nesters, not so much family. But under 40R, we would still be eligible for money from the state because it's a 40R, right?
The 40S payments, yeah, are related to a 40R district.
Right, but it doesn't we would still get payments even though we weren't targeting single-family households.
Okay, and there are two different types of payments that I'm aware of. One is for the town putting the 40R district into place.
Right.
Second, that's combined with that is when the units, new housing units are actually built. So that's a different payment from the 40S payment, which is the school
Right.
part of that. So yes.
Okay.
So in summation, the advantage of us doing the 40R is we have more control over it.
Mm-hmm.
We are getting reimbursements from the state and hopefully funding.
Regardless of the type of housing we put in.
Correct.
Yeah,
And
that's what I kind of want to
helpfully
emphasize.
Funding for the infrastructure that's going to be involved with this,
Right.
as opposed to having to deal with the 40A or whatever they're going to finally call it, that's going to be mandated no matter what.
Right,
Right.
right.
So it makes
And
more
in
sense.
which we will receive no payments.
Correct. Or maybe minimal
Or,
payments.
we might get the 40S,
But we won't get the,
but we won't get the 40R.
And we won't have much say over it.
Right.
So that was the impetus early on
Mm-hmm.
when we started, let's go backwards. When we started a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, it was because we wanted to see development there. In the middle of that, the 40A started to get aware of the state was going to mandate it anyway. That's why we all decided to finish up the 40R. Now we're coming back to let everyone know why we're doing it, what we're going to do to try to make it more palatable for everyone, and the fact that the difference is if we do nothing, something's going to go there and we're going to have no control over it, and we're also not going to be able to reap the benefits of what the state would do if we do put it in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we're going the route we're going right now.
Right, yeah, exactly.
so I have a couple questions. One is there a number of units that's required or a number of acres?
15 per acre.
No, I know the density. What about the total number? So if
Oh,
we,
I see.
No, the state hasn't set a total number.
if we did one.
Reasonable, they say
Oh.
a reasonable area.
Yeah.
But
And
that's
that
up
could
to,
depend on the town.
that's up to their interpretation, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm wondering if there's like a 1 acre of 40A3 or whatever we call it, surrounded by 51 acres of 40R. And the other,
No, but I think you're missing, Matthew, if we do the 40R, we don't have to do the 40A.
yeah, of course, I do understand that, yeah.
And that's kind of what we're shooting for.
Yeah,
And I seem to recall that Littleton is one of the very few, it may be the only community that doesn't have residential right near its train station. Did I dream that, or is that the case?
We're definitely have the largest undeveloped parcel at a commuter rail station in the state.
Right. So they're gonna be looking at us.
They are.
And if,
Yeah.
if all of the land around the MBTA station in a town is developed already, and and the town is still mandated to do it, eventually the state will require the town to build a 40A in some other location on a plot of land. Is that what you're reading into this requirement?
I think I lost you a little bit on that question. The town would be required to allow multifamily zoning in either at the commuter rail station or another location.
So what if it was already there? Let's look at like Alewife. So what is that? That's Cambridge? So Cambridge already has,
They already comply.
yeah, so they wouldn't be required to build any additional units because they already have sufficient? I'm assuming it's a question.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yes.
So again, we're definitely on the radar because we don't have
Anything.
anything.
Right.
Any zoning that allows multifamily.
Or
other
any
than-
actual housing. Okay.
You gotta remember, we don't allow multifamily as of
Right.
right now. For
I
anything.
guess I'm also kind of emphasizing this in case anybody is listening, that
Right, right. I mean, I
we're
think
kind of up against a wall here.
we are, and I think it's important for residents to realize as well, we didn't just randomly come up with this idea of developing near the train station. It's part of the master plan, creating development, housing development where it makes sense. It was part of the master plan. The master plan was accepted by the residents of Littleton. They voted to approve it. It's something that we decided on as a community was best for our community, based upon a lot of research, outreach, public sessions. There was a lot of people involved within the development of the master plan. People talk about controlling development in Littleton, and I've learned through working with Myron for a number of years now, we can't control development in Littleton. We can guide it to the best of our ability. And we're really trying to encourage housing where it makes sense, development where it makes sense. Littleton Station is clearly one of those areas where it makes sense to develop. The state recognizes that. We as a community have recognized that, and we're just trying to move forward with that initiative pursuant to the master plan. So I think it's important for residents to realize that, over the course of the year, the Metropolitan Area Council has identified certain areas of Littleton which are primary preservation areas and primary development areas. This area of Littleton, is designated as a primary development area. There's been other areas of town that were primary preservation, which unfortunately we did lose to development along the way, but, over the course of many years, this part of town has been designated as an area we would focus on for housing development. And there is definitely a need in our community for that. I, did a few housing presentations. I'm on the Affordable Housing Trust, along with Mr. Nordhaus and Mr. Montanari. And we are seeing a decline in residents ages 19 to 34 in Littleton, and that is a big concern. We are aware that our seniors cannot downsize and move out of their homes, which is something that we've been listening to for a number of years. And housing costs are impeding our labor market. We have a lot of people who work in Littleton who can't afford to live here. And so that is a concern that we as a community should be cognizant of. And so this proposal that we're bringing forward with this zoning bylaw change is really to meet a need in our community. And as was just mentioned, the state is going to mandate this if we do not move forward in this direction and have control over it as a town. So I hope that this is informative to residents. I know that there was a lot of confusion, or some residents just feel like they weren't fully informed about this project. So that's why we're here to try to revisit this and get the word out more.
To that point, we should probably make the residents, especially the ones on Foster Street, aware that as we move forward, we're going to take out, or at least we're going to discuss taking out all the independent living or assisted living units that we were talking about in conjunction with the nursing home up there.
Right.
So we're gonna just strictly focus on the parcel right next to the train station.
Right.
And so that was, I believe it was 129 units, correct? So our new number, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, is 300, is that where, somewhere around 3? All right, to be determined.
Yeah, that's a big reduction in the number though.
So just so that we did hear what the residents were talking about.
Right,
So as we come back with the finished version of what we started a year and a half ago, as we move forward, that's gonna, the consensus that we're not going to put any other parcel. We're just concentrating on the land right next to the train station.
right.
Now,
So-
go ahead.
Sorry, so I want to, actually, I have spoken directly to some of the opponents, and I think probably, I understand why it's a good idea, but I think there are some things which are, we can't, we will always see opposition to. I think one of them is Foster Street and handling the traffic and the increase of traffic, which I may be able to be mitigated. The one that I think is bigger is people discussing conservation land. And, you know, when you look at it from the point of view of we're going to, you know, turn 50 acres of meadow and forest into housing when there are 300,000 square feet of empty commercial development right across the train tracks. And I think many people would much prefer to reuse instead of building new. So I understand that in this situation, the owners of the land are proposing the development, and we may not have control over it. But I think no matter how we frame it, we're going to see, you know, some significant opposition to that, to any sort of development there, apart from what it's zoned for right
Right.
now.
Well, it's zoned right now, commercial.
Yeah.
It could be, there could be another Amazon warehouse up there right now.
So
Is it
let's,
light industrial, commercial, or? I don't, anyway, that doesn't matter. Yeah.
so what other what are the challenges? Let's talk about the challenges. Are those the only two? Because I think we should figure out how we're going to address each challenge, if it can be addressed.
Right,
Foster Street is probably the biggest challenge, I think. I think
Yeah.
we need the town officials to be more upfront about the plan for the redoing of Foster Street. It's going to get redone, it's going to get straightened out, it's going to get,
it's just,
Can
Made
we
safer.
back up, though? Can we first, I'm trying to just put some organization around this. Can we
Okay.
first identify all the challenges?
okay.
yeah.
Are those, and then address each one? Are those the only two we're aware of that we need
So
to
I
I
address?
think impact on services is a real one as well.
Okay.
School, water is probably one that's going to come up, given the current state of our wells.
So
I
in
don't-
that summary I gave you guys?
Yeah,
If
do you have
you
some of
look at
that in
it,
there?
there's concerns in there, so let's add to that list.
Yeah, okay.
Because I have
Foster Street.
infrastructure, Foster Street, public safety, increased school enrollment,
Okay,
something about commuter parking, I don't know if that was
okay, and
necessarily a
then, oh
concern.
yeah, you did do
So
all
then
this.
other concerns.
All right, so that would be the conservation.
And you said water, Matthew?
Yeah, I think people might be concerned about that.
Yeah, water protection,
Is it protection or just
Well, I think
water?
is it going like, so
Sufficient water?
We've spoken to Nick in a couple cases where he said, you know, this last
aquifer
summer,
protection?
this summer, our reserves were incredibly low because of what's going on with PFAS. You know, is 300 more
So
apartments.
water supply.
Yeah, is 300 more apartments going to put a load on the system that causes us to, you know, I don't know what, use PFAS contaminated water, you know,
So water supply.
and school use, I think. I think fire and police are more easily remedied.
Right,
I don't
yeah,
think
this,
those are-
Public
we can,
safety.
yeah. And we can answer to the school enrollment, we've got the data on that.
Right.
Yeah, I'm curious, we should look and see what so the 40S payments are for school use tied to the new development?
Because I think what would be useful, I mean, I'm speaking here from just a resident perspective, and how do we present it to them? I think if we have the challenges listed, and then how we're going to address each one of them, would be helpful to people.
Yeah, I
to
agree.
understand.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
All right, so can we think of any other challenges, or is that pretty much summarize them? Joe, Lauren, can you think of anything else, Ed, that you've heard?
If I may, Ed Mullen, Building Commissioner, 10 Grist Mill Road. When you guys are talking about Foster Street, and obviously we saw the signs that went up on Foster Street before town meeting, and it is a concern for the residents, and I would, I know we're gonna try to address them when you guys are going through this process. I didn't hear, I know it's in there when you guys say Foster Street, but just so we get it on the public record, we're talking about sidewalks too, right?
Right,
When we're talking about Foster.
Sidewalks and I think volume. are the
Correct,
two
yeah,
things.
traffic calming
Traffic,
measures.
Bike
how-
path and
Yep.
walking trail, walking paths.
I think when we talk about Foster Street, we hear it in here, we're thinking of all these things, but I want to make sure it gets put in the public
That's a
record.
good call.
Also, tied to that, Joe Layden, Assistant Town Administrator for the record. People also raised that, well, I thought Foster Street was a scenic road. There is a specific process that then, through the planning board, can make any repairs, maintenance, reconstruction that would require going through the planning board. I think sometimes, and I know this firsthand, when something is named a scenic road, people then think that means you can't touch it at all. But there are things that can happen with planning board approval and aesthetic considerations to approve something. So that's also something that we have to communicate out as, well, this is scenic. That means, we're gonna about to lose all the scenic value. That's not necessarily the case, but it is something we need to take into consideration and explain as part of any outreach.
That's a good point, because when Durkee went in, being part of a scenic road, we got to look at the entrances. There were stone walls, we had made them rebuild the stone walls, we made sure the trees that were taken down, if at all possible, we could replace them and put maybe a smaller tree if it was a sightline distance and stuff. So it's not like, you hit it right in the head, it's not a no-fly zone. We need to be cognizant that it's scenic and try to rebuild it and make it as scenic as it was before, but it's not an insurmountable task.
So one of the other things I heard from, I can't remember, some other residents was, well, where does that additional land come from then? If we're gonna put in multi-use paths like bike and pedestrian, it's gonna come from my front lawn.
But it's not your front lawn. It is a 50-foot right-of-way there.
Okay, so yeah, so I think it's an educational process.
So you know what, do you think that we should invite Chris Stoddard in to share with us the plans for Foster Street?
That would be great if we have, do we have working plan?
Don't we have
I have
plans?
75% design plans right on my
Okay, that would be
computer right
great.
here.
Maybe
It's
we
on
have
the-
them come in the
It's on the
next.
town's website.
But doesn't it also, isn't it over a period of time? Is there a way to expedite it so that we can reduce the amount of opposition?
No. Oh, go ahead.
Well, my experience has been, excuse me, John, when you have a project, you can expedite the road repairs or road construction. Without a project, it doesn't go anywhere. So I think they work together. Without the project, you don't get the road improvements. With the project, you get the road improvements, that's how I've always seen it
The tail wags the dogs.
work. Exactly, yep.
So Mr. Layden, what we,
This is right now is scheduled for the 2024 tip. They're going to be pulling things together over this next fiscal year, finalizing elements, and then in 2023 going out to bid. 2024 sounds like it's still a long ways off, but for roadway projects, that is right around the corner.
Even for this,
And remind me where it would go from the train station?
To Harwood, I believe.
Let me just get to
No,
that.
other way, from Taylor Street, just past the commuter rail station to Balsam Lane.
Okay.
That's the new Durkee farm entrance.
Yeah.
That's
And
the
then-
full depth reconstruction plus the multi-use path off to the side
Yeah.
for that stretch. And then
Where are most of the residences concentrated?
The other direction.
Yeah, between the train station and Harwood.
Yeah, see what I'm getting at? So that doesn't,
But it qualified for TIP funding because it was used by a lot of the local businesses. Their employees were coming to the train
Right.
station and then trying to.
So this is what I have.
So we've got it at one end, how do we get it at the other end?
So there are plans for that. So this is from Chris Stoddard. He had said to me, to date, the town has approved the reconstruction of Foster Street from Taylor Street to Balsam Lane, utilizing federal funding. The construction is planned to occur in 2024, and the design includes a multi-use path. The section from Harwood Ave to Tehadawon
That's the,
would be the next section to be reconstructed, and the design is at the 25% stage. Construction of this section is likely to take place in 2025 to 2026. That was from Chris. I don't know if that's since changed, Joe, or not.
No, I mean, the first part dealing with what's under the tip, got it spot on.
Yeah.
That second part, that's where there's the potential for expediting. I mean,
Yeah.
he's using Chapter 90 funds. You know, that may be an opportunity to sort of bump that work along, coming in
Same
with,
time.
or at least
As it goes.
reduce that. Especially because any type of large residential project, they can't build it in a day. I mean, the planning board knows this from
Right.
subdivisions. You know, you probably have subdivision that's still a decade after starting construction, they're still
I mean, what do
building
you
out final
think the
phases.
earliest would be that we could start something?
Well, that's what I was just trying to get to.
Yeah,
Even if this was approved at fall town meeting, say,
right.
you're still, then we get the state involved, then we have site plan, special permit, everything else like that. We're still a year and a half, 2 years away before even you see a shovel in the ground.
Right,
So by the time we're
So by
starting this, the
then-
roads are gonna be starting 2024.
yeah,
And-
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So maybe charting some sort of timeline for the public as well would be helpful, so
Right.
they can see what we're really looking at, that it's gonna overlap here.
right.
Before we go too far down the road, I just want to make mention in that list of road construction that was just read off by Ms. Napoli, that from Harwood to Balsam wasn't mentioned, and I think
Yeah,
that's
I
a
was-
significant portion of the road.
I was about to say.
Yeah, so that, yeah, and so that is the second part, well,
Okay.
yeah, so then he said that would be followed by a section of Foster Street from Balsam Lane to Howard Ave, including reconfiguration of the intersection of the four corners intersecting Foster Street and Howard Avenue.
Thank you.
So that would be after.
That's the
that would be the
2025.
That would be phase 3.
Yeah, pretty much,
So probably
right?
looking at 27.
But we don't have
Okay.
any concrete plans or schedule for that yet.
I don't think for that phase, no. So do you think it would be helpful to have Chris come in?
Is there a way to
I
get,
think it'd be
to
informative,
get that on the
definitely.
timeline, phase 3?
Yeah.
So people understand that, look, it's not just pie in the sky, and make it a concrete plan?
Right.
Is there a reason why we're flip-flopping them? Why can't we do the second part as phase 2 and the Harwood to Tehadawon is phase 3?
Actually, I think Harwood to Tehadawon is in worse shape and is narrower than Balsam to Harwood.
Well, they're all busy, so.
Yeah.
Well, I
but I
think we
mean,
got the
6 of
federal
one, half
funding though
dozen
for
the other, I
Balsam.
guess, yeah.
Some of the section, at least from Balsam to Harwood, you could walk along the side, but a lot of that section between Tehadawon and Harwood, it's like there's stone walls or trees or a bank, 1 foot away from the white line.
Right.
Right, and going back in history with the planning board, the Croft Common, which is being developed off of Foster Street now, they've already reset the poles in front of their development for a future sidewalk. So there has been some planning as development happens down the road for future sidewalks, so.
Okay, so I really, because I know that there are designs, like Mr. Layton mentioned, so maybe we will invite Mr. Stoddard in. I think it would be great to have this discussion with him in the room and see what designs he can share with us.
Mm-hmm. And if there's some missing components, maybe we have some designs made so that people understand there's a complete plan here.
Right, right.
So for the 3 people that are watching tonight, do you want to set up tell them when our next meetings, do you want to discuss when the next meeting?
Yeah, we should discuss our
I'm just throwing
schedule.
stuff at you, Cindy, so you can hit it out of the park.
No, we should totally do that. Yeah, next steps, when do you, well, so one of the things I talked to the town clerk about was us being able to utilize this room and meet opposite select board
Okay,
on Monday nights. Just because if, in the event, we do get more people to come, that we at least have the adequate space for them. So
so when is the next time you guys on?
we're meeting next Monday night. correct, Mr. Lake? No,
Next scheduled is August 9th.
August 9th.
Yeah, so we don't have select board meetings for the next 2 Mondays, I believe.
Okay.
We don't want to meet that soon, do we?
What, back here?
I want to meet every week, Mark.
Good, go ahead.
Yeah.
You have a party. I'll leave the door, I'll leave the lights
So the
on.
16th? But we're not adjourning, right? Because I want to
No,
still
no,
talk
I'm
about
just-
these other
we might as
challenges.
well-
Mark's just kind of moving us
I mean,
along.
we
Yeah.
could do Monday the 2nd, which is 2 weeks from now, and there's no select board meeting, but I don't know if that's too soon as well.
Well, I think honestly, like going through this list that we have of concerns, why don't we invite in Chris Stoddard? And why don't we invite in Chief Bernard too?
Yeah.
And have them both come in and talk about,
I think honestly, conservation
safety.
is going to be a bigger issue than public safety.
yeah.
I do too.
And so I think
Is that a whole separate meeting?
Well, it could
Or do you
be.
want to invite them all in?
we could invite Conscom and perhaps someone from LCT to come talk. But I don't know I don't know what we can offer. Like, I think we should discuss what our options are as far as conservation.
I do too. Yeah,
So
I
do we
think,
know what their concerns are,
Well,
other than it's
yeah, I
open
think-
space?
I think
mean-
there's a couple. Like, I think one is that there's a lot of underutilized or unutilized buildings in town, and
why pave over?
why pave over 50 acres of forest when there's space that we could use?
To be perfect, that's on a conservation commission's, that's not their
Yeah, but
jurisdiction.
conservation, not necessarily conservation, but conservation commission, but conservation in general. People who are concerned about open space and, retaining land that's in pristine condition rather than developing it.
I think one of the advantages of what we were looking at with the 40R was to have green spaces, a lot of walkability of this, and preservation of open space. I mean,
Yeah.
that's in the plan. The issue is, if we don't go this way, then the state's gonna get involved, and if the state doesn't get involved, and the owners of it decide to go with the zoning that's out there, then
Yeah.
it's gonna be all paved.
I mean,
parking lot.
short of some anonymous donor saying, okay, I'll buy the land and we'll turn it into a big park, we kind of.
I agree that
Yeah.
it seems like that, I can't think of a scenario where the whole parcel gets put under
You
conservation.
know what bothers me a little bit, to be honest with you, is we've been talking about developing this parcel for a number of years now. Back in 2009, there was a plan to put in a parking garage, 364 additional parking spaces. That included a 3-story parking garage. No word about that from conservation during those meetings that I'm aware of. That land has been on the market for sale between 2009 and 2017. There was a sign up there for lease, for sale, whatever. There was never any discussions, at least that I'm aware of, with conservation coming forward and saying, hey, we've got this vacant parcel of land, we really should try to save it and preserve it.
Yeah.
No discussions whatsoever. 2017, there was a proposal for additional parking and housing units. I wasn't involved at that point, but I don't recall conservation coming forward. Maybe they did at that point. And here we are now, again in 2018, there was a big development that was proposed with 23,000 square feet of retail, single and duplex residential units, a senior center, 96 independent living units, and 144 mid-rise, 4-story housing, and 16 loft units. That was in 2018.
Yeah.
But people's opinions change. I understand kind of where they're coming from. I mean, we do have all these parcels on the other side.
Right.
That it would be great to put stuff there instead of
Oh, I
pavement.
totally get
So I
that.
totally get that. But
Yeah.
the fact that this is right next to a train station, it's going to get developed.
I know, and I just to be clear, I'm not talking about Conscom or any of the
Right.
municipal organizations. I'm talking about
In general, just people are
people in
concerned.
general who
Yeah.
are concerned with
Sure.
open space.
So
So
there is gonna be open space, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of open space across the street with Turkey.
yeah,
So it's gonna be a continuation of that. I don't remember exactly how many acres we had left, but there is a lot of green space.
so I
with this
think
proposal.
like talking about that
So
and
emphasis
quantifying
on-
that.
And the other
would be a
fact
good
is that
start.
we're taking the 129 units out of there. That's all
Yeah.
that's all gonna stay. And that part is that residential there? Yeah, it's residential, so it's It's not industrial, so that's green space.
Right.
You know, we're not including that as part of the housing.
So
now,
I
we're
think
taking
that's a
that
good
away.
point.
But
We
could
just
that get
need to,
developed
we need
later?
to emphasize
It's
that.
houses if you wanted to.
So so when a developer comes in and says, you know, I'm gonna build X, Y, and Z, and I'm gonna give the town X amount of open space.
Yep.
How do you, is there a formula for that? How do you calculate that?
So normally we do an open space plan, we say it's a 10-acre parcel.
Yeah.
And say you can get 9 houses on a 10-acre parcel, let's say.
Okay,
When a developer wants to do open space, he decides to put all the housing in one area. So he puts his 9 houses, he gets his 9 houses still, maybe he only uses 3 acres. The other 7 stay in open space. It's
Okay.
60/40, 70/30 as far as how much the open spaces, it's mostly clustered development is what it really is called.
okay, so there is some formula to that.
You have to, you can't get, theoretically, and I'm not saying it always works that way, you can't get more units than what you could conventionally get.
Right,
So you have to demonstrate that you can get those 10 houses, and then what we do is we group them or we cluster them one spot, and then we do all open space. Now,
Right.
since we've done open space bylaw in the town of Littleton some 20 years, every project that's come before us has pretty much been open space, because it makes more sense for the town, and it makes more sense for the developer, because they save money on infrastructure. If you clump it all together, you have
Right.
less roads, you have less infrastructure, and it keeps the open space.
But there is a bonus density.
There is a bonus density if you're not using frontage lots, yes, on some of them.
and I've heard complaints that sometimes the open space that is being donated to the town isn't useful. It's,
We try our best to get open space that's viable, and why are you laughing at me?
I just am because
Oh, you like it, put me on the hot seat.
no,
eh?
I'm sorry, I'm just, yeah. I'm
We
just
try to
sharing
get
what I'm
open, we
hearing.
try to get usable open space. Now, depending on some usable open space is usable for animals, some use open
Right,
space.
how do you define
Some
that?
of it
I
you just
like-
get to look at, you
I
can't
like
walk on
open
it.
space that you can
Right.
actually walk on and not sink in. I
Yeah,
like to be able to have passive recreation on open space.
but it really depends on the parcel itself. You can't really pick and
Well,
choose.
some of it is and some of it doesn't. If they're gonna give us junk, then we try.
But there's a benefit to all of that open space
Right.
from every perspective, right? If you save the open space that's wet, you protected wetlands. If you save the open space that's uplands and you allow passive recreation, you're still impacting open space. So sometimes you want to keep people, like conservation, our own department tries very hard to make sure people stay on the trails. They create the trails so that you can enjoy it without impacting the open space. So again, there's benefits to both. And then you can even get, the active recreation where you can put in ball fields, but
Right.
there's benefits to all.
If you
of
look
it.
at the one we did off of Hartwell Ave years ago, that was part of the Hartwell piece.
Yeah,
We got 100-something acres. We had fields that are still being planted on. We had active recreation. You could put your canoe in. You could go up and down the Beaver Brook. You had a little bit of wetlands. There was some vernal pools and stuff. But of the 100 acres, probably 80 acres was still walkable. Durkee's on the other side of the road has some corridors that are more for animals and for making sure that they can pass through the woods and everything else. But there is open space. There's that big field. You have that 5 acres that the town is getting the house and the barn from. That is open space, but
Right.
it's usable. If you look at what we did up in Gristmill, the back of Gristmill, that was all wetlands. There was no real benefit to the open space there other than preserving it. We got a donation to buy open space of $100,000 from the developer for the town to purchase open space from that. So we try our best to get decent open space. And getting back to this one, if you remember, it's been so long since we've had a chance to really look at the plans again. There's a lot of green space out there. There is an awful lot of. The buildings are all down off to the side over here. Then you have the housing up here, and you have everything in the middle is going to be green space. So
Right.
there is going to be a fair amount of open space to
Right.
this project.
right.
At
And
our next meeting, could we have the big
Map,
plan?
yes.
Lauren, can you bring whenever we meet again, the big map?
If you, let me know which one it is that you're looking for, sure. Is it one that's not posted to the site?
I think it'd be useful to
I
have it
think she
here.
wants it so we can visualize it
Yeah.
up on the screen.
Yeah.
Or maybe if you
I know
want
which
to
one
just,
you're talking about, just like the color, like it shows.
Yeah, but it's the big one that we can spread out. I think it's helpful for us to look at too, but.
Yeah, and then we can show the piece that we're taking out, we're removing from.
yep.
So back to the preserving,
Let me know which one it is.
yeah,
you're looking
we'll let
for.
you know, Maren.
Okay.
But as far as deciding on the open space, there's a bunch of stakeholders that come together for that process. As far as conservation's consulted with that, planning board,
We send them, they get a look at everything, sure, as we
I'm
go
just
through
trying
the
to figure out that
process, yeah.
process.
I mean, I think conservation is primarily concerned about wetlands.
Yeah.
I think that, but I'm curious if the 40R has any kind of restrictions on buildable area, open area, or if it's all pretty much up to us to set aside what we want and clump them where we want them.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we set it aside where we wanted the houses, where we wanted, the single families are going here, so we've done all of that.
No,
now, too.
I'm sorry, I mean, if the 40A comes in, or if we do the 40R, either way, we don't have any additional restrictions coming on where we can put things.
If we do the 40R, we do. If we do the state thing, all bets are off. They have a clean palette, they can do whatever they want there.
Right.
Right now, we have the higher density going, using the topography going on the other side of the hill. We have the single-family houses up here, we have a little commercial here, and we have a big, if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, I wish we had a map. We have a big area in the middle that's open space, green space, walking space.
So we can show that next
We
meeting.
should do a site walk too at some point and invite the public.
We should, before it gets too cold out there, we
Yes.
should have a meeting out there.
I think when you're doing that meeting, if I may, maybe fly some balloons for proposed heights on, so you can show the topography goes down, the building comes up.
That's a
You're
good
really not
idea.
changing
Yes.
sight lines, so I think that would be a benefit to the abutters and to anybody else that's interested.
All right.
Let's also not do it when it's quite this humid.
Well, let's do it in September, how's that?
Yeah, September would be good. Everybody's back, kids are in
The
school.
foliage, yeah. I thought you were gonna say when it's not raining.
We'll get a little fun out there with apple cider.
So not July, some cider donuts. I think the next one I'm interested in is school enrollment and what the realistic reimbursement of payments from the state would look like. My impression is it would never be enough to actually cover the additional load on the system. But I don't know. For their 40S payments. And I'm curious if there's a way we can somehow quantify
Do
that.
we even know if there's gonna be an increase? Was it the presentation that was done a year ago by, his name
Mike
escapes
Fontanella.
me. Mike Fontanella, showed that the enrollment was actually going down a little, to like 4% or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
So Maren had pulled together, and this is, I'm taking this right off the town's website, about the increase in school enrollment, and what did it say? It said, well, there was a study done, what was it, backwards. Was it Metropolitan Area Council? Did that study that they found no correlation between housing development and school enrollment?
Yeah, I remember that reading
But we had talked about, you talked about, was it the Littleton, 15 Great Road development? There was 144 apartment units and 56 single-family home ownership units, resulted in 35 new students in the Littleton Public School District. So that was some useful
That's-
information.
Yeah,
That's 200
good.
units, they got, yeah.
Yeah, so if you think of it that way, it was 35 new students, but if you do talk to the school committee, I remember Mike Fontaine, it's just a continual cycle of students in and students out, so,
Okay.
but that's the only information that we really have.
And this is gonna be
Into
probably
that.
less skewed that way because we're going after seniors and first-time home buyers who are not
Yeah, and young, yeah.
younger,
Young
don't.
professionals.
But I
yeah.
think when you say they're gonna be primarily 3-bedroom units that people see that
No,
as.
they're not.
no,
1 and
no.
2?
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
not-
1 and
not-
2.
Yeah, okay.
It's not gonna be a lot of threes.
No.
Studio 1 and 2s, I
No, they can
believe,
buy the single-family homes.
Yeah, okay.
for $1.3 million.
Yeah, exactly. Let's all sell our houses, and then we'll move into the one-bedroom apartments, because we'll be seniors.
Do we get first rights?
And I often think we're missing the other side of that conversation. Is it easier for the school department to hire and retain teachers if they can afford to live somewhere in town?
Right,
Yeah, that's a good point.
it's a really good point.
I think it's very often, when there's resistance to development, citing increase expenditures associated with schools. You know, it's so complex. Schools require, just for status quo, some level of development. And I think for a lot of people, that seems counterintuitive. Well, you have one more student, so that's got to be valued this. But you don't know capacity, you don't know some of the other investments that they need that student for. And very often, especially when it ends up being rental, you're getting starter families. They may have one kid that maybe's kindergarten through first grade, but then they're looking for that starter home, or they want to put down roots and they're looking for something else. When you look at these types of developments, the various studies that you just mentioned and Myron just mentioned, they're not contributing a lot. And even just with 15 Great Road, 200 units to get 35 kids, divide by 12, you're 2 point something a grade. It's not,
yeah,
It's not a huge influx.
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not gonna fix the problem with the football team, that's for sure.
So I
Get our
think
priorities straight.
the other challenge mentioned, Matthew, was the water supply.
Yeah.
So how do we address those concerns?
I think we have to talk to Nick and get him to come in and you know, ask him. I'm sure that they are modeling future growth, and, you know, he needs to speak to that.
Yep,
But I'm sure he can.
okay.
The good news is that he had worked with the Master Plan Implementation Committee at least a year ago, and had looked at development at the Foster Street Commuter Rail Station, plus up at Taylor Street. And so they're ready with those answers.
Okay,
Good.
perfect.
All right, good, so maybe for the next meeting, that's what we'll focus on. We'll invite in Conservation, Chief Penard, Chris Stoddard, the Water Commissioners, just to address all these concerns.
Do we need the water commissioners or just Nick?
Just Nick, or
Well, whoever they
representative.
want to
yeah.
send, yeah.
Okay.
It might be, I think the chair is now Jimmy Carr, so, of the Water Commissioners, so we'll see who they want. Or it could be, it's probably gonna be Nick and Corey.
Right, and most likely be, definitely Corey.
Yeah.
Nick if he's available.
Yeah. I think that would be helpful.
I think when you do conservation, you might want to, I mean, Amy Green can probably give you all the answers. I don't know, who's the chair now for conservation?
They haven't voted yet.
So probably Amy.
It's gonna be Chase. Just a guess.
That's a good guess.
Yeah, but the difference with conservation for this is a zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
This is really not a site-specific, so they're only gonna be able to talk in general terms. I mean,
Right.
their input comes in once this is approved, and then they have to go look at the wetlands, and they have to flag the wetlands, and they have to make sure that, you know, that's all taken care of. But from a zoning standpoint, it's, you know, they can tell us the same thing everybody else, we want more open space. we want more
But I
green.
think I'm suggesting that we have this dialogue to respond to critics who are saying, why do you keep paving over all the open space in town? And whether it's zoning or not, they don't care about that. They just care about how much of the space is gonna get developed and what it's gonna look like. And why can't we please have, you know, why can't we use some other place in town that's already been paved instead of this one?
Because we can't, it's cheaper to pave it over than to move the train to get it to go someplace else.
This is a train station, people.
Yeah, there's like lots of
And
stuff
I
on the other side of the
I
tracks.
also think if you look at those 4 or 5 commercial buildings that are on the other side of the road or the tracks, there is a lot of open space with those buildings.
Mhm.
You know, there's a significant amount of open
Yeah.
space. And everybody keeps talking about these unoccupied buildings. If you go by, they're occupied.
Are they?
Just so everybody's aware. Every single one of them has a tenant, if not more than one tenant, and they're no longer unoccupied buildings.
So
I
do we
also-
have any vacant buildings up there?
None
Truly
that,
vacant?
not to my knowledge.
Okay.
But some that are probably not completely full or
They're
mostly.
underutilized.
Just vacant.
Yeah.
Well,
Most of
yeah.
them are underutilized,
Yeah.
but they are not vacant.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's good to know.
And that's the other challenge, is that, you know, their best use may be for redevelopment, for offsetting and diversifying our tax base. To rezone industrial office buildings for residential use, we're then taking away employment opportunities, they're taking away opportunities to diversify our tax base, and you know, and that's something that the town has done a great job taking advantage of its location to allow for office buildings, shopping, retail, to try to take some of that burden off of the residential property owners.
Right. I think the other thing too that people have to understand is, again, this is a train station. This is not the ideal place to conserve land. This is the ideal place to put in affordable housing and look at other areas of the town where we need to preserve.
I think we need to remind everybody, this property's been for sale for 30 years.
Right.
We have 20 plans in the planning board office from Roger Nordblom. Every couple of years, he'd come up with something else that was going up
Yeah.
there.
So something's going to go in.
Oh, yeah, well,
Exactly.
And,
It
you know,
can't keep-
fortunately, we have an owner who really wants to work with us on developing something that the town actually needs.
Well, not just that, but I think it's how everything's coming together. We have the
Yeah.
state that wants us to do
Yeah.
this, that wants to give us money to
Right.
do it. We all know that for 50 years, we haven't had mixed use in this town. We haven't allowed apartments, and we've realized that we're losing a sector of our neighborhoods to the seniors and to the first-time home buyers who can't afford to live in there. It looks the average, 1.3 million for a first-time home
Yeah.
buyer. Who can afford that?
Right.
I mean, so we have to do something, or else Littleton's going to just be Littleton's going to be conquered in a couple of years. That's all. The only people, rich people, are going to be the only people that can afford to live here.
Except we don't have the quaint downtown.
No, we don't.
That's true. Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, no,
let's
I'm
not
saying like
forget.
we're conquered,
Yeah,
but
we're working on
without
it.
any of the income
Yeah,
from the
no,
tourists.
Right,
We're
right,
working on
right.
a
And
nice,
any of the
cute
amenities.
downtown.
yeah, exactly, right.
Anyway, but it's not in a vacuum. This property has been for sale for
Yeah.
20 years.
All right, good.
Okay.
All right.
talk.
So when did we say we were meeting again?
August,
August 2nd, are we okay with
Well,
that?
do you want to first see if all these people can meet with
Oh,
us
yeah,
on August
that's right.
2nd? If not, it would be the 16th.
I think if you set the date, you can set the invite.
Okay. I think we should do it on the 2nd then.
all right,
if
yeah, let's
everybody
try August
can.
2nd.
Oh, great. That's great.
Same time?
5:30.
We could do the 16th day after my birthday, but no, we'll do the second.
What about you, Mark?
No, it's all about me. I'll be here. Can we do Zoom into this too?
No.
Oh, we gotta be live.
We gotta be live.
Do you want to ask that guy who's been here all by himself?
Yeah,
If he has any
guy.
question?
Mr. Webster, if he has any
Yes.
questions, comments?
All wonderful, I don't need to steer you any way, one way or the other, I'm just happy to see Nate getting some action, we're getting smart, and my comment to Marion is, we should do a master plan.
Oh, God, that's a good idea.
Head in the right direction, I will have more to speak to, and I'm most concerned about transfer of development rights, so we gotta make that happen too, so,
Well, can we get one problem on?
I know, appreciate it. Realistic, helpful, thank you, glad to be here tonight, I'll come back to.
Great, thank you.
Perfect.
Okay, so we've got that down
All right,
on
good.
August 2nd.
So
All
next
right.
meeting's August 2nd at 5:30,
Yep.
and we'll, I'll coordinate those invites that we discussed, get Mara the map that we want to show for visual. Good. Anything else?
I'm good.
Good.
We're good? Okay, so our next meeting is gonna be August 2nd. If there's anybody out there watching. So
I
that
mo-
is,
Oh, sorry, go
no,
ahead.
you take
I
it.
move to adjourn.
I second.
Motion's been made to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Excellent. That concludes our meeting for tonight. We will
Great.
see you back on August 2nd. Thank you.
Great for being live. I love it.